Hello, everyone. Welcome to hour two of our 24 in 24 for Sam's challenge. I'm Pei, and this is Nicole, and we're here because every single conversation matters. And right now, someone somewhere is kind of like sitting in silence, probably with thoughts that are too heavy to carry on alone. So tonight, we're proving that this doesn't have to be the case. So for the next half hour, this space belongs to us to talk about conversations that matter. But more important than that, it belongs to all of us showing up for each other. So whether you've been with me since midnight, which was only about half an hour, 1 hour ago, or you've just joined, you're part of something powerful. So let's create something here that's important together. Let's be present, let's listen, and let's show what happens when we truly see each other as fellow human beings. So Nicole, I'm so grateful that you are here. Shall we dive in?
Let's do it.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Nicole. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. So gosh, what is the time? It's 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, and it's freezing here. So we're on the other side of the world experiencing winter. I'm from the UK originally, though. Grew up and lived in and around London. Moved to Australia in 2009 with my wife, who's from Melbourne. So we moved home for them. Um, yeah, and we know each other through Salesforce World, right? Like it's a small world. We connect through work, and we've built that connection, even though we've never actually physically met, which I think is it's probably pertinent to today's conversation, right? Connection is always important for people's mental health.
That's true. I think even though you're on the opposite side of the planet to me, we've connected over various different things. So thank you again for volunteering to do this with me. And when we were speaking about planning the sessions, and you thought that suicide was a topic that not many people talked about, and it was
Hmm.
something that you wanted to dig a bit deeper. Tell me about your thinking and how that came about.
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose even more broadly than that, mental health isn't something that people talk about, right? And I think we're more than happy. We say, yeah, I've got doctor's appointments. I've got a cold or I've stubbed my toe, like whatever you go to the doctor for. We're generally more than happy to talk about most physical things, perhaps not everything. But very rarely do we say, um, I'm going to see my counselor today or my therapist, or actually I'm seeing my shrink, or, we don't talk about those things. Um, and I think that makes it even harder, therefore, to step into a conversation about suicide, right? Because that's one step even further. Um, so I, I, I would love to talk more about mental health generally. I've got children. Particularly during COVID, I remember we got into the habit of talking about having mental health days, where we were like, let's just recognize we cannot function in the way that we are expected to function today. So let's do something else. And we've tried to maintain this idea that we can talk about mental health and how we're feeling just as much as we can about the fact that, I've got a headache, or my ankle hurts, or I've tripped over something. Um, Suicide is, I think, something that is often spoken about in hushed tones. If somebody dies and they died through suicide, you tend not to mention it, right? It's often like, it's well, it's so sudden and nobody saw it coming, and so there are hints of it, but very often it's not labeled, it's not given a name. Um, and I think that's a shame, because I think it means we can't talk about it before the event, right? If you can't talk about it afterwards, you definitely, it's almost impossible to talk about beforehand. So when you suggested this, we jumped on the call and we started talking about some of the things that we might talk about. And I guess I'm aware. I know several people who've died through suicide over the years, and I know several people who've tried. Um, and for whatever reason haven't succeeded. And I think that that's sometimes surprising to people, that I'm aware of that. I know that about my friends and family and so on. Yeah, so that's kind of how we thought it would be a good topic to talk about.
So you say, for example, there are signs. Have you had friends where you've seen the signs, and or is it only on hindsight that you thought, oh, that's tell me about that.
Yeah, look, first and foremost, I am not a professional, right? I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not trained. Not any of those things. But if you do think somebody might be suicidal, or you're just generally interested and you do a bit of googling, the things that people who are trained, like organizations, health organizations, mental health organizations, tell you to look out for are things like changes in behavior, right? Like someone sleeping more or less, someone eating more or less, someone not taking an interest in the personal hygiene, someone withdrawing from social connections with family and friends, those sorts of things. Um, and I think those things are really, actually, really hard to spot. Um, and I think about the people that I know who have died from suicide. I've not been close enough to them to spot those small changes in behavior, right? Like if I went out with dinner with some friends for dinner, I wouldn't necessarily notice that one in the group was eating less than usual, right? Because I wouldn't know what they normally like. I don't monitor how much food my friends are eating. Would I hope I would notice if if someone in my family was exhibiting behaviors. But I think a lot of it is in hindsight, right? When we um, talk about it after the fact, people often say, "Oh, it's so surprising." Like even famous people, I remember when Robin Williams died from suicide, right? And people were like, "But he's a comedian. He's so happy." Uh, and you look back and you think, what were the signs? What did we miss? And yeah, you might start, oh well, there was that time when they were going to come and then they didn't come out for dinner, or we just didn't hear from them for a while, or you look back and you think maybe there were some signs. But I think I think often people just don't even notice, and that's the scary thing. I do sometimes think that there are sort of two versions of 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 suicide, if you like. Like there's the sort of the and I'm just hypothesizing here, I don't know, right? But there's the sort of the almost calm, premeditated, I'm going to write goodbye letters, I'm going to give away some possessions, I'm going to, I'm planning this, right? I'm getting my house together before choosing to kill myself. And then there's the moments in very obvious emotional distress where someone might say, I'm not, I don't say I'm done, I'm going, and they disappear and they're really, really heightened emotionally, and they might go and commit suicide. I think that's quite different. And obviously that second one is really obvious and visible, and you can essentially do something about it, even if it's physically restraining somebody. But the first one, I think, is really hard to notice and to spot, and it takes people who've got that real close connection with somebody to realize what's going on, I think.
So a couple of things. I think you opened up a few things that maybe I'll just share a few things. So one of the things that I do on top of being a listening volunteer for Samaritans and my branch, I also train new volunteers. And one of the things that we need to learn to do is on every call, if possible, is to find out if our caller has had those dark
Yeah.
thoughts. And it is how do we ask that question? Has things been so bad that you've thought of taking your life? Now, one of the myths that a lot of people are afraid is, oh, if I ask them, they might think, oh, you've just put a thought in my head. I'm just, yes, why not? Our research has shows that that is not the case. That is absolutely not true. So if you ask somebody and they do say yes, it's likely they have thought about it in the past, but they've
Mm,
not articulated it. So through my, one thing, the new volunteers who are being trained, this is something that they are very worried about. They're very worried that the callers would say, oh, or be outraged.
yeah.
So maybe I'll share a couple of tips,
Mm,
how to. So we're talking about signs. Sometimes there are signs, and sometimes they are not. And we discussed this ad that we've seen online
yes.
where about two men who goes to a football game or a game of some kind, and you see one's like very subdued and the other one's like really cheering and things. And the title is, who do you think is the one who won't be there next year? And it's the one that you didn't expect. So sometimes there are no outward signs. So we, just broadly, if I talk about what Samaritans do, we listen. So we ask about, how they're feeling. Usually they know that calling us means that they're going to share something. So we'll want to find out, what happened. Did something happen today or things like that? Um, and we pay attention to what we call trigger phrases. And trigger phrases are things like, I can't take it anymore. I don't want to wake up tomorrow. It's too much for me. Anything that sounds like this. And what happens is that we pay attention and we actually ask more clarifying questions. When you say you don't want to wake up tomorrow, what do you mean? Can you tell me what does that mean? Um, they say I don't want to be here anymore. So what does that mean? Does it mean you just want to like go to sleep and then wake up 6 months later and all the problems gone, or do you want to end your life?
Yeah.
So what we try to do is we try to find out. And interestingly enough, just an anecdote from myself and a lot of other volunteers. So I'm very comfortable asking this in real life to friends and people as well. And as I said, most of the time, if they've thought about it, they will share that they have had those thoughts and
Mm,
they're glad that someone's asked them the question so that they can say, yes, it's been really, really hard,
yeah.
you know, for what I'm going through. What are your thoughts about what I've just said there?
I think that's, I think that is a really, I love that approach, right? Because again, it shouldn't be wrong to ask that question. It should be okay to ask that question. That question should mean, hey, I'm noticing you. I care about you. I'm thinking about you. I I wonder if there's something wrong and if I can help, right? And I'm here for you. That's what that question is saying. There shouldn't be anything wrong with asking that question. And if the answer's, oh no, then great, right? Now you can have a conversation that's framed in a safe space, and if the answer's yes, then it good too, right? Because then you can, as you say, unpick what's going on, offer whatever help you can, connect them with the right resources. Again, it's that, what you said at the beginning of the conversations about it not being okay to even talk about. It's this taboo subject, and if you, yeah, if you talk about it, somehow it makes it real. Well, it needs to be real. It needs to be something that we can talk about because, yeah, it's not going to go away if we don't talk about it. Yeah,
That's true.
I like that approach.
You were talking about the two facets, I guess. One is the one where someone's planned it, written the notes, and the other one where I've had enough. I think there's a middle one
Mm,
somewhere in between where sometimes life just gets, is bit by bit by bit. It's not like, oh, this.
triggered. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's
yeah.
just those
Builds
little
up.
things that builds up. You talked about during the pandemic, um
Mm.
and how it felt like a pressure cooker. Can you just, like, just, you're on the other side of the planet, just, I talk to me about that experience for you and the people in your community.
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone had fun during the pandemic, right? Like, we all had very different experiences. Even in Australia, each state handled the pandemic quite differently. And then even, like in Victoria, where I am in Melbourne, um, we were all going through the same experience, but from different perspectives, right? Like I'm in a family of four, very privileged, very lucky to live in a house with enough room for each person to be in their own space, doing school or work or whatever. So super lucky in that way. But with our own challenges of, having to work full time as well as homeschool a child and, you know, not being terribly great at understanding why they don't understand why 6 + 2 is 8. I don't know how else to teach you that, but it just is like, well, right? I'm not a teacher. I don't know, right? So that was our experience, and turning our home into a gymnasium for our kids that do gymnastics, and trying to do online gymnastics, like just yeah, and not knowing when it was going to end. That was my experience. But then, I had colleagues who were living on their own, and the loneliness and the boredom and the just monotony of the days, that so hard to deal with. I mean, I think everyone's situation was challenging. I mean, I remember saying at some point, that even though we had not the biggest lockdown, because it wasn't, but it was, I think the longest lockdown we had was like, I don't know, 100 days or something, right? Um, I remember saying to my mum, who was in the UK, or my sister, I think it was, that I actually felt lucky because at least I felt safe. I felt that I could go to the supermarket adequately masked, and there was a really low risk, right? I understood the numbers, I could do the maths, I understood that my chance of catching COVID was low. If I did catch COVID, I knew there were still hospital beds available for me to be in. Like I was in an environment where I felt safe, whereas I knew my sister was living in an environment where she's like that, and then my wife's family live in a different country, like just you know watching what was going on around the world and just seeing everybody's experience. For me, it felt like it brought people together, um, with a shared experience and an empathy to understand what people were facing. Yeah, and we tried to roll with the flow, and our kids were young enough that if they missed a day of schooling, it didn't matter. They could work out that 6 + 2 = 8 another day, right? But yeah, it wasn't a fun time, right?
No, I think for
No,
we had more calls during that time as well. I
I can
think
imagine. Yeah.
people felt so isolated, and mental
Mm,
health was just, you know,
yeah.
and especially for those in the frontline
Mm,
services, that was kind of insane.
yeah. It was interesting to see here. I don't know what they did in the UK, but here, like we had the library staff in various different libraries sitting at home calling library members on a daily basis just to check in, just say hi,
Wow.
just doing things like that, just finding different ways of giving the library staff something to do, but also connecting them, creating this connection and saying, hey, particularly as a lot of library members are perhaps older, um, yeah, and creating that community as well.
Yeah. Um,
Mm.
we have a question by Christy. She was on just before yourself. So she asked, do your children find it easier to discuss mental health with their friends since you are so open about it as a family?
It's a good question. I don't know. I know they're very open about talking about a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't get to talk about when I was a kid. I'm part of the queer community. They've got two, uh, you know, we're very open about that, and I know that I'm like, yay, the kids talk about it all the time. They're so on top of things like consent and LGBTIQI plus issues and rights and so on. Like, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong. Mental health stuff, I know they talk. I know they have a language around it. I know they talk. I'm not going to remember the right words. Like, it's low key and vibes and Gen Z's way, or alpha, whatever they are, is way beyond me. But I do know they have a, like, they when they have an argument, they have a really kind of structured way of resolving things with their friends, which is a little bit like a counseling session. They don't call it that, but it is that. Yeah, they get together, they talk about it, they have structured, which I think is wonderful. So I hope they are. And I know the schools are putting a lot of effort into well-being and so on, a lot more than, it wasn't even mentioned when I was at school. So, look, I hope we're creating an environment, we as a community are creating an environment where it is much more okay to talk about how you're feeling, as well as how you're feeling. Like, my ankle hurts and my head hurts, right? Like, and my heart hurts. Yeah, I hope we're doing that.
So in the UK, for example, a lot of schools talk about mental health. And I remember during COVID, there were questionnaires they had to fill. And I remember my boys thinking, oh, this is a waste of time. How am I feeling? Okay, 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 okay.
Yeah.
It at that time, I think it felt, I guess, contrived at that, because it was like a survey, and they're sitting there thinking, okay, my teacher wants me to answer this today, kind of thing, as opposed to
Yeah.
uh, a different way of engaging and checking in. But I think nowadays for kids, there's a whole different raft of social pressures and mental health to them.
Oh God. Yes.
It's very different to,
Yeah.
yes, when we were growing up. So I, from my point of view, I think it's important just to talk about it, whatever that might look like, even if I've never encountered it and don't understand.
Yeah.
So in my family, I'm very open with a lot of the topics, substance abuse and obviously suicide and mental health and things like that. Hopefully, I guess from my perspective, it'd be great to protect them, but I don't think we can.
Mm-mm.
Um,
No.
I think it's all about inoculation in my head. By talking about it, as you were saying, I've not, I've not talked about consent, for example, because I feel, or maybe the opportunity hasn't come up, but it needs to come up. My children are teenagers now, and I don't know if they're sexually active, for example. But I guess it's a topic that needs to be discussed. In my defense, I grew up. Okay, I grew up in Malaysia, where I didn't learn about birds and bees till I was 16. That is
Sure.
how we didn't have sex education at school, and
Yeah.
it wasn't. I'm just going to divert very, very quickly. So when my boys were 12 years old at school, they started talking about sex education, and I was so, what kind of questions are they asking? What are they talking about? And my son said, "Hey, mom, at school they've got this box." And Mr. McLaughlin said, "If we had any questions, we can just write there. We don't have to write our names, and we can just put it in, and they'll discuss it the next day. Do you have any questions that I could submit to you?" And I said, "No, no, no." I
I love it.
I was just wondering if, you did, but
Yeah,
it's so different for me.
it is. Mm.
So as you say, topics like consent and these sort of things should be discussed and talked about and put in the open, so that it's not like a taboo. I think anything that's a taboo has a way of coming out and in a bad way. I don't know how to explain it, but
Mm, correct. But even the consent thing is interesting, right? Like, so I think about consent as not just being about, sexual activity, right? From childcare, they were being taught about consent. This is you're in my bubble. I don't like it, right? And from you're in my bubble, as in you're too close to me, your hands are on me and I don't like it. That's from day one, you're sort of telling a kid that you have agency and you can control what's happening to you and you can ask for that to stop and that person needs to listen to you. And then that's at that age, that's about, and for my kids who are black, that was very often about people touching their hair, right? And so from an early age, it's very much people are not allowed to just touch you. At the moment, it's about your hair. When you get older, it could be about something else. But from day one, and then the same is true about mental health, right? It doesn't, from day one, you don't have to be talking about suicide, right? But you can be talking about feelings, and it's okay to be sad. We don't want you to be happy 24/7. It's okay to be sad, to be able to understand and articulate what those feelings are about. And think about, my youngest in particular still says, I'm not feeling very happy today, mummy, and I don't know why. Right. And I'm like, that's okay not to know. If you want to spend some time thinking about it and talking to me about it, we might get to the answer, we might not. You might never know why you were unhappy today. It's okay to have those feelings, and then you can start. It's always about age appropriate, right? And I think that's the bit that people often, particularly with sex education. The moment you say sex education, they're like, "Oh my god!" And particularly about queer relationships and so on. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other topic, right?
but I think what you say is really on point. Just talking about kids, I think lots of people want them to not be sad and not feel like what they're feeling, and move them on to. I think that happens with growing up as well. If
Mm,
you're sad, let me try and fix you
yep.
because your sadness make me uncomfortable. Let's go out, let's be happy, rather than as we're talking to Christy earlier on about grief, about not
Mm,
going through or feeling those feelings, those emotions, and kind of like working through them. And I think that if we don't teach children that it's okay to feel what they feel and just sit with that and
yep.
understand that, then it does them a disservice. So that's a pattern they'll carry on.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to get them to encourage you. You've got to encourage them to talk to you about everything and anything, right? I always try and remember that when I pick up my kids from school and they start blabbing on about stuff. Well, they either blab on about stuff or they use one word syllables, like and I'm like, if they're blabbing, just let them blab. Just don't shut them up. Don't, even if it's boring and you don't know what they're talking about, just let them go because you never know when that's going to stop, right?
How remind me, how old are your kids?
14, nearly 15, and 11.
Oh, I think our kids are the same age, but my teenagers have moved from blabbing to like one syllable, and
Yeah,
it's really hard right now. So
correct. Yes,
trying to get them to share their feelings, it's an ongoing battle.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, with that, Nicole, I'll thank you so much for your time today. Um, just kind of like any kind of like parting thoughts you want to share with our audience.
Uh, I guess, going back to that conversation, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to just say, "Hey, you okay?" And just check in. People, I think, are very good at putting things into boxes. Here are my feelings. I'm going to put them into a box and just get on with my day because that's what I'm supposed to do. But it's okay to open that box and share it with people.
I'm just going to take what you say there and just like open it up a little bit.
Mm,
I slightly different perspective on the asking someone if they're okay, because what I have found out is that asking someone to answer I'm okay or I'm not okay is a very big step to
Mm,
put out there. So a halfway house, it's like, I would say, I'm getting the sense that something might be going on because you're not eating as much, or you seem a little bit more subdued, you feel more close. What's going on? So
yeah,
that can allow them to, have it however they like without the, should I admit I'm not okay? You know?
correct. Yeah, you're putting some context. I notice X. It makes me think Y. Am I off mark? Am I on topic? Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That might
Brilliant.
make it for the other person to open up, is what I feel.
Yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
anyway,
Awesome.
this has been a great conversation, Nicole. Thank you so much for making the time. I,
Thank you.
despite the little mistake about it's tomorrow, is it today?
All
Thank
good.
you so much for
All
making.
good. No, thank you. Bye. All
Take care.
right.
Good day.